good team is having social workers who are able to capture the full picture of someone's mental illness, have experience in it, have the training in it, and have psychiatrists. And grief comes in many forms, whether it's a breakup, death, losing a job, losing a friend, losing anything significant. And it's rough. So in regards to like training and stuff, I think it's crucial to have crisis prevention. CPI, you need it.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back. This is the All of You podcast where we sit down with all of you.
Before we begin today's episode, we are going to insert a quick trigger warning. We will be discussing topics related to severe mental health challenges, including suicidal ideation. We believe that it is imperative that we are able to talk about these things openly, even in a professional landscape. A 2024 survey by the Government of Canada states that every year, approximately 4,500 people die by suicide across the country. This is the equivalent to 12 people dying by suicide every single day. It goes without saying that our mental health is not miraculously improved the second we walk through the doors of our workplace. In fact, it might get worse. If you're struggling, we hope that this will let you see and hear that you are not alone. Do not struggle in silence. We strongly encourage you to reach out to a mental health professional through your local emergency department or contact a suicide prevention hotline. For those in Canada, that number is 1-833-456-4566 or text 45645. Olive Branch Mentorship Incorporated is a strong advocate for mental health support in the workplace. And the All of You podcast is here to support those of you who are navigating through tough times at work, especially when it comes to keeping your shit together there. Your overall well-being matters to us. We hope you take something meaningful away from this episode. And as always, take care of yourself first.
And we are extending the olive branch today to one of the dearest and greatest, and actually one of the board of directors of Olive Branch Mentorship Incorporated, Aleena Busamara. Am I saying that correctly? Aleena
You
Busamara?
said it like the more exotic way.
I mean, exotic. Aleena, my friend. Oh my goodness, please. Welcome to the podcast. How are you feeling?
Nervous.
What is this like for you? How are you feeling right now?
Nervous. But a good nervous.
Lean into it.
It's exciting.
Yeah, it's exciting.
It's a good nervous.
And of course, we have our hostess with the mostest, Shambhavi.
I'm back.
You're back. Sham just rocked the podcast with Do the Daniel. I just can't get over how natural you were on the mic the last time we sat down to do this.
Yapping should be my profession.
Hashtag yapper. Hashtag yapper for sure. Hashtag yapper. Okay. So I want to just get right down to it. I want to get to know, I want the audience to get to know a little bit about you and why Olive Branch Mentorship. Like when I approached you with this harebrained scheme of this idea that I had, and when you think sort of how your career aligns with what Olive Branch Mentorship is all about. Talk to us a little bit about why.
I just want to go back to actually a year ago. You sent me a text asking how would you feel, or one day, like how would you feel just like teaching someone a workshop about social work?
Oh.
This was like a year ago, and I was like, "Oh, like, was she asking me for real?" You sent it in a text, and it was like literally just to ask, like, "Would you ever be comfortable?" Like, maybe I'll do it one day. But you actually said that a year ago.
I know, yeah, over a year ago, yeah, like a year.
So this has been kind of in the works for a bit. But when you asked me, I honestly was just like, so this was like a year ago. Is you asked me randomly, like, "Oh, would you ever want to teach a workshop with me?" It was like the beginning of like I think where you were kind of brewing some thoughts, and I was like, sure. But when you asked me for this, I was just like, I barely know what I'm doing. What do you see in me? But that's kind of the whole
What do I
purpose of
see in
this.
you?
But
Oh,
that's the
wow.
whole purpose of this. I was just like, are you sure you think I'm competent enough? This is that. And you flip the switch. You're like, no, like I'm asking this because I see this. But
There was some major imposter syndrome flooding through, but I have that too. I have that too. Very much.
And I think that's like I like, you know, my field of work, like being a social worker, I have imposter syndrome every day. But like, when you asked me, I was like, is she crazy? And not crazy.
I think a lot of people have been...
But like not crazy in the sense of like, I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, it was like, oh, I'm affiliated with someone this bright and articulate and driven. And I'm like, okay, then this must be serious. And then now we're here. Does that make sense?
And now that we're here, I have questions.
Oh,
Yeah.
Sham always has the good question.
Yeah, but that's where I'm still like flabbergasted.
So, like, leaning into the imposter syndrome and the whole idea of associating yourself with OBM, you're a social worker, right?
Apparently.
So, apparently.
Who gave us the responsibility or the power to be able to say that we do that, right?
Yeah.
Before we even go into like your day-to-day imposter syndrome stuff, like, what kind of prompted you into getting into the social work field? Like,
Yeah. Gonna sound corny, but I think my mom. So I actually, right after high school, I went to Humber College to study fashion business. But I lived on.
I don't think I knew that.
No, I did a placement, and it was like my life. And then
Where did
loved
you do your
fashion.
placement?
It was at a boutique in Hamilton, and I'm still friends with actually the owner of the boutique. She sold it, but she asked me to model some pieces last night, so I did.
What?
Full circle.
Oh my land, I love that.
But I went into fashion, and I went to go live on Humber residence. And I honestly used it more of an opportunity to get out of my shell because I was so shy and like no confidence or anything. And I just used that as an opportunity to party. I got a job after at like a magazine downtown Toronto. It was a complete shit show. It's fine. It was horrible. She went like bankrupt. Not good.
Oh no. The magazine.
Yeah, it was a magazine called Women's Post.
I don't remember that. I don't
You
remember
don't want to
that.
know it.
What, like
It's okay.
too long ago for
It was
us to be a concern.
It was okay. It was like on a little, we worked in a little place on somewhere downtown near Queen Street. It was great.
Like
but
West End.
Yeah, it was great. I loved it. I would commute every day and I thought I was so trendy, but I wasn't. But then with social work,
Your mom is a social
my
worker.
mom is a social worker, so I think she exposed me, and like you think that it would scare me to not go into the field, and but I came into it.
What, not to say where your mom works or anything, but like what type of social work does your mom focus on?
Yeah, so she works more with those who are, it's like concurrent disorders, so more like substance use. So she's like a saint, and like will go on and like she can save lives just using Narcan. Like she's so good.
Is she in the street? Like, does she do street?
She does
health?
outreach work. She does outreach work,
nice.
and like works for a nonprofit.
Nice.
And just loves it. But I originally, before I like really to go back to your question, before really wanting to commit to like, you know, the 6 years of school.
And yeah, how did you transition from fashion to social work?
Right? Like I started volunteering at the food bank, and I was like, let's see if I even like working with people. Like I hate people, but I don't. So then I was just like, let's just try. So then I started volunteering at the food bank once a week, and I was like, oh, I really do get joy from, I guess, helping people. And then I was like, all right, let's apply to Mohawk for social service work. And I did that. Then I got hired at the food bank. I worked reception there. I did checked everyone in who was accessing for food insecurity.
Can I just say around about what age you were at that time?
23, 24.
Okay.
So
nice.
late.
So this was you transitioning into
Yes.
social work?
Yeah,
Okay.
this is like later than people usually find there, right? But like I was like 23, 24, and then I was like, okay, I really love it, but I wanted to get more money. So I worked at the food bank and put myself through school. Then I went and got my degree at Laurie, and I bridged.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
you upgraded from
I did. And I
SSW
worked-
to BSW.
I worked 'cause
RSW.
I worked 3 jobs to put myself through school.
Wow. So you're currently working as a social service worker, right?
No.
I'm a registered social worker.
There we go.
Yeah.
So what
So it's
kind
worth
of
it.
what kind of fields do you work with? Like,
Yeah.
What's
I work specifically with like acute psychiatric illnesses. So like when you're having like your mental breakdown, you see me. And then when you're a bit more
I
stable,
love that you're
I
talking
ship
about
ya.
it as like when you do.
Yeah.
So when you have your when you do.
Yeah.
So when you have your
Yes.
psychiatric breakdown.
When you do.
All of you.
You're on my speed dial.
All of you, every single one of you. But
number's
that's the
going
thing,
to my
you have
speed
your
dial
psychiatric
yesterday.
breakdown.
people think it's like, oh, it's just those people who are displaced or anything. No. I've assisted people who are lawyers, who are nurses, who are students. Fair, because
Yes.
that's like when you're really going and
Well,
derailing.
like,
But
I
Tell me about it.
I can tell you with confidence. I'm not confident about saying this because it's not a happy thing to be confident about.
Yeah.
But I can come into work on a Saturday or a Sunday morning, and there are always overdoses
Yep.
of young people, like students, especially around finals and midterm time. Overdoses are very common.
And that's what my mom works with. And that's how I was exposed to this field, was when I was like maybe 12 or 13. My mom was a single mom. She sometimes would have to I'd have to go meet her at work to go pick up food. I don't know. She was working and in school. Single mom. And then
You grew up in Hamilton.
Grew up in Hamilton,
Yeah.
born and raised.
Yeah.
And then she brought me into work one day, and I think she did it as a way to kind of scare me. Like, let's do some parenting while we're doing some stuff here. But there was this beautiful, like 17-year-old sex worker, and she had got beaten black eyes from her pimp. And she was there, and there was blood everywhere. There was just a bad trade.
Oh no.
And my mom looked at me, and she's just like, "This is what I do for work." And I will never forget it, because that can completely shape my career.
Wow.
And shape me professionally and personally, because I was like, I don't ever want to be
Did
in
your
this
mom
place.
explain to
She
you
did.
what that meant, like pimp and like?
Yeah.
I don't even know if you can say pimp. Like, is
Yeah.
that a thing
It is
to
so
say?
it
Like,
is actually something.
there's
that
a song
it's
out there, I mean,
there's a
I'll be bad.
song.
I don't know
but
what
like
you
it's
heard
actual.
about me.
It's actually a term. It's actually a
know,
term,
it is a term.
and they use it. Like, there are pimps and they're
So that's their designation.
yes.
So how many years have you been in this field for now?
Social service work I was in for 7 years, and then now that I guess
As-
social work, like hospital social work, 3 years. I did my placement, so 3.5 years.
Where did you do your placement?
Schizophrenia unit.
How
at
was
West
that?
Fifth. It was
Oh,
great.
talk about that. I would love
It
to know
was
about
lovely.
a schizophrenia unit.
I loved it, and again, it was so a lot of the times.
Hold on one moment.
Yeah.
So not everybody who's listening is necessarily a mental health specialist
Yeah.
or even somebody that knows what the nuances of schizophrenia
Yeah.
are. So can you just first of all describe what a textbook description of a schizophrenia patient would be
Yeah.
and types of people you would work with?
So if you're gonna look at someone who has the schizophrenia diagnosis, it can be a lot of terms here, but it's usually those who are responding to internal stimuli. So that's if you see someone literally talking to themselves and you're like, okay, what's going on? It's because they're literally seeing hallucinations, whether it's like religious preoccupations or
Auditory hallucinations.
auditory, visual, and they'll be convinced and rooted in that delusion or hallucination, however you want to see it, that something is there. So like I've had patients before where they've had, and I honestly like most of those who are living with schizophrenia are the most brilliant individuals ever, because their minds are making up all of these crazy scenarios, but it's because there is something captured in there, right?
Rewired.
But there's a chemical imbalance, right? But like I've had a patient before where he had this in his head where God was telling him to harm someone, and
God was telling him to
yes,
harm someone.
and it's a lot of the times rooted in religion.
So
Yes.
you have a patient who has auditory hallucinations and he's thinking about hurting someone.
yes.
Who? His mom, his brother, his teacher?
So yeah, it can be sometimes hurting a family member even. So that's called Kapka syndrome. I don't know. I think that's how it's pronounced, but it's like where you think like, I'll think that you're not Shannon and I'm going to hurt you because I'm not familiar with you. And I'm convinced through my like auditory or visual hallucinations that you're out to get me, even though you're my best friend.
I'm going to just disclose a little bit of a TMI right now.
Yeah.
My biological mom has schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorder, and she has that. Well, had that when I was
I think it's
growing up. So
Kapka syndrome.
she would see my brother and I as ghosts
Yes.
or as like different people in a moment in time, and we would have to like explain, like in the moment, try to
Yes.
explain to her what,
Yeah.
like, no, mom, it's me. Like, what are you, we would have to
And
bring her
it's-
back.
And
Yeah.
it's really sad, especially when it's that deep in. But I was actually saying this to my colleague the other day. I'm like, I think, although it's like really hard, I think schizophrenia is my favorite psychiatric illness to work with because there's bipolar disorder, there's borderline, there's all of these other things,
are very complex and very sensitive and very unique conditions for all people who have it. But schizophrenia is a different one.
And often sometimes it's sometimes treatment refractory. So like there are those who are so ill and so sick and so unwell that it's just impossible. Clozapine won't hit them, nothing. And then they just get to the point where they have to be shipped off to somewhere else because it's such a harm to themselves.
I think it's maybe selfish of me to allude to the fact that my mom has my biological mother. I was not raised by her my entire life, but she was one of those circumstances where she had a court-ordered injection of her medication because she wouldn't consistently take her medication, and then she would either be a harm to herself or a harm to others, and so they made it a court-ordered
treatment order.
And she was followed by an ACT program.
So we have ACT in Hamilton and in the Halton region, and they're the ones who work with you from a full scope practice. They have social workers, nurses, occupational therapists, everything, peer support, and we usually connect with them, but their wait list right now is 3 years. And that shows you the gaps in the service because there's not a lot of outpatient providers.
I know. And I mean, I don't intend to speak about her experience because I haven't been connected to her in decades. So it would be unfair for me to speak to it. But all I know is that she had a court-ordered injectable. If she didn't show up in the 2 weeks, whatever, then the police would go out and find her because she would immediately be formed. Yeah, baby. She would immediately form, and then that would be a direct admission to the psychiatric unit because it would mean that she wasn't complying.
And then we
her.
just give them, like, we would just give their injection and ensure we revisit the CTO and do all that. Yeah,
whatever the extenuating circumstance that led to her not showing up for her scheduled job.
Dealing with people with schizophrenia. What is one of the major things you get affected by, especially like before when you were working with?
Oh man, the families that are impacted.
Yes.
So a lot of the times, the one patient that we had that was treatment refractory, just nothing was hitting him. Not ECT, usually ECT is treated for depression, but we will use it on patients that we're just trying to find some kind of treatment plan that's going to be effective, but where nothing will hit them and where they're literally convinced that their family is the reason they are the way they are. And there's no fixing them. We've had top psychiatrists, top psychologists, top social workers, everything. But the families, they've lost a loved one, so it's like grief. But I think that's, for me, the worst part, when there's no light at the end of the tunnel and they pretty much have to wipe their hands clean.
Sean, do you mind if I ask a question? I know you're the question queen, but I have a question for you. And the only reason why this question is so important to me is because my father, who died of Lou Gehrig's disease, wanted to pursue MAID.
Yes.
But MAID at the time was not legal. It wasn't legalized until quite literally a year and a month after he passed. You, I'm sure, have heard that the government has been back and forth about whether or not mental health patients should qualify for MAID. Talk to me about your thoughts on that.
So I recently had a patient who, about 2 months ago, she was, what did she have? She had multiple
menagerie,
multiple psychiatric illnesses, but was quite with it, had insight, her judgment wasn't too impaired. But she kept asking for MAID because she's like, I'm done. And I kept saying, we're not there yet. We're not there yet. And I don't think it ever will be there. We have a whole MAID team where I work because it's.
But the government hasn't approved it for mental health patients at this point, right? They at the last I heard, they tabled it because there was too much kind of.
But it has to be treated with such delicateness because a lot of the times, I only see it because I work on an acute unit. But a lot of the times, those who are seeking to have MAID and want to
are actively suicidal or something.
So no, I don't think it will be there for a long time, considering so many people are a lot of the times impulsive with that these days, and it's crummy. That's why they come to me, because we just work it out and we talk about it and we get a good plan. But I feel like a lot of people would jump to MAID if they were having those suicidal ideations. And
Well,
they would
I
just
mean,
use
the
it.
alternative is you unalive yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
you work like at the like as deep as it can get,
Mhm.
right? So your personal opinion on just having an assessment and being able to at least have that option in place. Do you think that should be at least
No.
considered? No.
Because
That's
you
fair.
think there's always a way to get to the bottom
I'm
of it and treat it.
optimistic. I'm optimistic. I think if you have a good team, and you have the right supports in place, and you
Can you define what makes a good team and
Yeah.
the right supports?
so good team is having social workers who are able to capture the full picture of someone's mental illness, have experience in it, have the training in it, and have psychiatrists that, like the psychiatrists I work with, are phenomenal because they don't just, I hate to say this, but they don't just give medications.
They're not pill pushers.
They're not pill pushers. They'll literally talk to you for an hour and ensure that they're getting to the
root cause.
the really scary parts that you don't want to go to.
Mm-hmm.
And having good nurses and having a good OT or occupational therapist and a physiotherapist. But I think having a good team and the right supports, and when I say good supports, is like I discharged someone last week where I put in like 7 sources of supports for them, and that made them want to live because now they didn't feel alone.
Yeah.
Right? So
Does it like genuinely translate to just the quality and quantity of people right there for that one
Yes.
individual instead of like
Yeah.
one person?
sometimes
taking
people
care
don't
of
want to
20?
discharge because they're like, wow, we feel so like cared for here, and we eventually want them to discharge because you have beds. you need to get rid
Yeah,
of. But-
patient flow. Oh
patient
my.
flow.
The black cloaks
But-
of society. I wanted to just mention specifically about having a good psychiatrist on your team because early on in my career, we're talking like 2011, 2012, I worked under a psychiatrist in geriatric mental health. And so I led the responsive behaviors program in a long-term care facility of 350 beds. And so I won't say who he is. He's retired now, but Dr. C, he would come in for doctor day. It was either once or twice a month. And he did his rotation and I would have to go in super early in the morning and prepare all of his charts. And then we would rotate through all of the patients who were on his caseload for that day. But quite literally, I think he was so comfortable in his practice that he just let me run the entire assessment. Like I would explain before we would go into the room what was going on with the patient. And then because I knew the patient so well, I knew the questions that he was going to ask. After you spend so much time with a psychiatrist, you kind of learn what their practice is. And I knew that he actually appreciated observing the interaction that I was having with the patient. And then he and I could dissect the conversation after where I could give him a little bit more collateral. So can you talk to me a little bit about your relationship with the psychiatrist and why that is so important to you to have a strong clinical support?
Yes. It literally changes the game. So I started off in medicine as a social worker, and you know how it is. Doctors, they just want to discharge if it's
Not everybody knows. Don't say you know how it is. Explain how it is.
So working in a hospital, especially on a medicine unit, it's fast. It's fast. You got to think quick. You got to think critically, and
it's all about moving patients through the continuum as fast as possible.
Obviously, giving them the best quality care that you can, but it's moving them through. Mental health, it's a bit different. So when I was on the schizophrenia unit, I became very close with one of the psychiatrists. He probably changed my life and how my approaches are. Because he went above and beyond. It's Dr. C. He's kind of retired.
Here's a
now.
Dr. C too.
Yeah, Dr. C. Loves him.
Love.
Still close with him. He taught me so much. He treated me like a resident sometimes.
Me too. How was your Dr. C's handwriting?
It was all right. It's okay. But it's
my
fine.
Dr. C's handwriting. That's how I learned how to read doctor's handwriting was through Dr. C's chicken scratch
I just think
notes.
that's like an initiation process. It's like you need to go through.
It's a rite of passage.
And then you make it through. But I learned that he was someone, when we went into assessments together, he would like to take the lead and I would ask more of the social work questions. Like talking about their housing, finances. childhood.
Because do you find that the doctors are not so inclined to know about those things? Like you have to kind of push
but they
the
work
doctor
it into
to
their
think.
assessments, and like it would be collaborative and very cohesive. And family meetings, though, with some doctors, social workers, we run the whole thing. It's all us.
What kind of questions do you ask
in family meetings?
Yeah.
So I usually open up family meetings with introducing everyone that's a part of the care team. I introduce everyone that's there for the family because I work with the family the most. And I usually state their progress in hospital, how they presented, where they're at now, what's their trajectory. And then they cover the medication part, and I talk about all the supports I implement, why I'm putting those supports in, identifying how crucial it is to how they're going to sustain their lives. But we kind of take over it. And the psychiatrists, they drop all their fancy pharmaceutical words. And I'm like, I don't know what you said, but let's see how we can make sure you understand it and explain it in like 5 real terms.
Explain this like I'm starting a lemonade stand as a 6-year-old.
Yeah.
I'm actually quite lost on the questions we were at, but your question initially was the importance of just having a stronger team.
Yeah.
Yeah, the team.
Right? That's what I was saying. It's super important. So
Yeah.
a lot of the times too is like, you're like, okay, a psychiatrist can be intimidating. I was intimidated at the beginning, but what makes it so good and strong is the fact that we are so collaborative. Like,
what makes them intimidating? Like how can you just dissect that a little bit more?
I think for me, like they're, I hate to say it, but like they're just really brilliant. Like, and they just speak so
eloquently
and like know all these things and EEGs and this MRI and the white matter here and this that. But the fact, so I can add what, like how you're asking me about questions, I can ask them like, hey, what do you mean for akathisia? I don't know what that is. Explain it to me. I can do that. And I think that's what makes it strong, because then it translates to how we take care of the patients.
Now, that is something that's really intriguing, because to be honest, I've never really worked with a lot of mental health cases per se, but you have, right?
Yeah.
Like you have worked with different fields.
Familial and career.
Yeah. So looking at all of these different healthcare fields versus yours, what is the one major difference that you see, like hands down, this is, if you are good at this and if you appreciate these qualities, you need to get into psychiatrist? Like, what is it?
Like
what's the characteristic you need to have as a professional to be able to handle mental health work?
It's a loaded question.
Like when you think about your professional toolkit, what do you think your like the things that you have spent the most time on in the last decade trying to make sure that you're able to do your job well? Yeah, and that exactly, that you don't burn out.
Like, you consider me as someone who's just exploring the fields and choosing on what I really want to do in healthcare.
For me, what saves me every day, I go in with a coffee and I print out my census and I write all the notes for the priorities. So for me, it's organization.
Keeping yourself.
I need to keep myself literally in check. I literally check mark everything I do every day. And I'm like, yep, I did this. Even if it's the smallest thing, like making a phone call, it's organization. Organization plus compassion and self-awareness. I have to be so self-aware with my job to make sure I'm not,
because your patients can be manipulative.
Yes,
your patients can be very manipulative. Your patients in some cases are sociopathic. Like, so you have to be able to pick up on those things, and that's hard.
And setting boundaries.
So let's just, for example, hypothetically, again, just part of the question is, how would you compare somebody who wants to go into psychiatrist versus like maybe surgery, like just out of the blue? People consider the surgery fields to be really prompt and getting into emergency or something like that.
From a social work perspective?
Yes.
So,
because you do need clinicians of all interdisciplinary perspectives in every program in healthcare. You need OTs, PTs, SLP, social work, and surgery. You need that in MH. Like, you need it everywhere.
If you're working in medicine as a social worker, I find if you want to go into that, it's a lot more you have a variety of cases because you have someone who like broke their leg and then now you have to apply to rehab for them to get better and learn how to walk again. And then you do have like a lot of overdoses because they're coming into med and they come in.
Overdoses
Yeah.
sometimes go to ICU,
Yep.
downgraded to medicine,
Yep.
and then medicine is going to do
And so
whatever sort of.
I think what's good about that is you see the variety of it, and that's great. And you can use your social work toolkit and do all that. For mental health, it's strictly it's literally those who are experiencing like mental health breakdowns, you literally have to pick up the pieces for them because a lot of them, because of their mental illness, they're going against their family because they think their family's coming after them. So it's just a difference.
It's almost like you become their safe space.
Yes.
Or you have to be able to become their safe space.
Like I know my patients' SIN numbers. Because you need to pretty much start from ground zero.
Yeah.
For them. You don't see that a lot in medicine because sometimes it's like a geriatric patient. They're there. We're doing like MOCA testing, which is like cognitive testing, which we do.
Montreal Cognitive Assessment.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then we have to then apply for long-term care because they can't return home because there's caregiver burnout. So and that does apply sometimes to the psychiatric unit, but it's a bit different.
Like, expanding on that, you mentioned that personal life, you know a lot about them. Now, is it the other way around too? Is it possible that a lot of your personal life get exposed in the process?
Or is that a boundaries thing?
Boundaries. So like a lot of the times they'll ask, like patients will ask me, do you have kids? Are you married? Where do you live? Do you do this? And I just look at them. I'm like, I can't say that to you. But a lot of the time, it's not malicious or trying to be sneaky. They just are trying
Even
to
as
build
far
a
as to have
conversation.
what your name is on your ID badge.
My last name is on there.
Is it?
Yes.
It shouldn't be on a mental health unit.
Because
You should advocate to put tape over that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be putting my first and last name on my
It's
name
my
badge.
first initial on my first name and then my full last name.
Yeah. So explain why. Explain why you wouldn't tell them if you have children or if you whatever.
I think it will cause an imbalance to the working relationship. I'm there to, it's the power dynamic. I don't think it will set them up for success, to be honest.
I think a follow-up question to that is, you talk about how, you're having these very acute, vulnerable moments with these people, very human, vulnerable moments with people. And so if there's a fear of letting them know your last name and if you have kids, how do you connect with them in a way that they trust you without exposing too much of who you are as your identity? Do you know where I'm going with that?
So like, how do I ensure that
you're developing a therapeutic
rapport?
Yeah.
I think like I literally open up when I do the assessment with them, I literally open it up and say like, listen, I'm here to work with you, not against you. And I tell them my role and how I can ensure that they're getting a full scope of care. And then they literally just tell me like, they're like, well, I'm exposed to you. I'm like, you are. But I kind of do like trinkets of like small interactions and then build it up. And then eventually the care and the trust is there. Eventually.
Takes time.
Unless there are so many patients though where they can refuse to get untreated if they're not deemed like incapable, voluntary, involuntary, where they'll never get treated and they'll just always
they do
have that guard
their
up.
3-day cycle or their
That's it.
21 day or whatever, and then they're
But the ones that stay, it's amazing.
Let's talk about personalization about you.
Yeah.
Like when you go back home, how much of it is still in your bag? How much is it you're taking back home with you?
It depends. A few months ago, I had a patient unalive himself.
I know which case you're talking about.
And that was rough.
Is
Yeah.
it the one around?
Well, she had been doing an incredible job, and they
With
gave
my
him a weekend
psychiatrist.
pass.
I
Yeah.
remember that was the board meeting.
We had a
weekend.
board meeting that day, and you didn't. And I just encouraged you to come because I think it's important to be transparent, especially with internationally trained healthcare professionals.
Yes.
Like, it's unfair for us as experienced clinicians who've worked in healthcare for us to paint the system as sunshine and rainbows, because we know that the system is not sunshine and rainbows. And even when you've dotted your I's and crossed your T's and gave the weekend pass with the utmost of confidence that this is going to be a success, you get that text message at 9 p.m. to say, I'm so sorry to tell you this, but your patient unalived themselves. Yeah. And so how do you cope with that? How do you deal with that? How do you wrap your brain around that?
That's where having a good team comes in. Good team. So like went in Monday to work.
Because it was the psychiatrist that texted you, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. Went in on the Monday and just everyone was shook. You saw this person every day. And we just checked in with each other.
And he was doing really well, right?
Doing wonderful.
Yeah.
Great. But
can you say what age demographic, like what in between
40
age?
to 50s.
40 to 50. Okay. Yeah.
Everything was fine. But after that, the team just really came together. We checked in. We had meetings. We have meetings to ensure that you have to do like a systems analysis.
And debrief.
Debrief. Like it was just very sad on the unit, but no one was judging each other.
Like a sense of solemnness, I think.
No one was, we just came together, and it was obviously not a good time. Like it sucked.
Yeah, coming in on the Monday would be rough.
Horrible.
Yeah.
Horrible.
Yeah.
Let's lighten up the mood. Let's talk about toxicity.
Toxicity. That's
even better.
She's shifting gears. I'm
love
into
it.
that. Let's shift gears a bit. Take us down that path, Sham. We'll talk about toxicity.
Like it's very common. Like I guess all of us on different levels. Me, Ray, starting off, and you guys are obviously experienced more. Different wards, different teams. We experience this culture of toxicity. Like it's always there. Like for example, in long-term care, people are slacking. There's just sleeping, stuff like that. Very basic. What are some of the biggest red flags out in your wards? Like what is it that you're observing, or something that you guys as experienced workers are struggling with currently?
With like other
specifically in mental health or in any area of healthcare?
Just with
I would love to know like you
and
separately, because you obviously work with mental health, and
I have more of a broader scope, I think.
So just what I see slacking from fellow clinicians.
Not really. Like slacking is my experience at most, because you would see a lot of people slacking, like PSWs and just workers.
Maybe like what do you find to be the biggest holes in the system, or like the biggest disparities in your program currently?
Honestly, just the push for beds with bed flow.
Discharge people faster, move people through the system faster, create capacity faster.
Our team is pretty good at pushing back, where we're like, no.
Yeah.
But that's it. Like,
so like how long does a person wait in the emergency department before they're getting an inpatient bed?
a while.
How long is a while?
We've had people waiting for 3 days.
Oh, so at my place of employment, we only tip in to escalation level 1 when a patient has been admitted for 96 hours.
Yeah.
And then it tips into escalation level 1. But that doesn't even click over into anything. It's just like, we're in surge now.
We often go into surge on my unit.
Yeah, us too.
It's like
to define what that means, when you're going into surge, it means that you haven't had discharges on your inpatient unit, and it means that there are patients accumulating in the emergency department that aren't being properly cared for, because the capacity in the emerge doesn't properly equate to what these acutely psychotic or whatever, homicidal, suicidal, whatever. It doesn't equate to the care and the environment and the right patient in the right bed.
Or we're going to gridlock.
Oh, and so what's gridlock?
Gridlock is when there's no bed flow at all. Nothing is moving. And we jump onto like a bed patient meeting, and we're like, what can we do? And we discharge them.
So are you shipping patients out to other hospitals? Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, so sometimes we will try to push going to our tertiary service, which is at another hospital. And and say like, do you have any beds? Or we move
Well, you
someone,
reach out to your partners,
Yeah.
like your community partners.
or yeah, we'll go to like our satellite facility. I'm not saying too much there, but satellite facility, and just see how we can work with everyone else to just again help with the flow.
It's just to spread the pressure
Yep.
points, right? And I think that's a systems
Yes, it's
problem
very
for sure.
systems.
For sure.
Very
What about
systems.
yours? Like,
Yeah.
what are your unit or hospital or your ward's biggest red flags?
So I have a slightly different perspective now because I worked in long-term care for nearly a decade, and now I've been in acute care for almost 14 years. Oh my gosh. I've been in acute care for a very long time as well. So my role has kind of shifted from frontline clinical to now more administrative leadership. So if you want me to speak to what I identify to be the biggest disparities in the mental health, it's staffing.
Oh, yeah.
Staffing.
Literally.
Like
All the
if
time.
so say I have like a cream of the crop shift, like you come in for your shift the night, like I work primarily nights. So you come in, you get handover from the evenings, everything looks good, all the beds are taken care of, and it's like, okay, all I have to worry about is staffing for the day shift or whatever calls or codes come in overnight. Guaranteed the units that I'm gonna have to spend the most time worrying about are the mental health units. They
Yeah.
are the most understaffed, under-resourced, and it's like we are shifting people from programs that they don't have training in. We're
We need
just
training with
literally
mental
trying
health.
to fill, like, to have 2 feet and a heartbeat on a unit to just make sure that when shit hits the fan, there's at least somebody there to try to help de-escalate the situation.
Why do you think that's the case? Why mental health units especially?
Well, the ironic thing is we're in, 2024 where the discussion about mental health is literally on the tip of everybody's tongue.
Yeah.
Like talking about your mental health and your therapist and your antidepressant
It's trendy.
regime is trendy. And so we talk about mental health as this, oh, I've got anxiety, or like my social anxiety or my depression or whatever. And like, when we're talking about people who are acutely psychotic, like, I don't know, I'm sure you have observed circumstances, but I have seen like a 90-pound girl need 7 grown men to restrain her.
Yes.
Like, I've seen that adrenaline in an acutely psychotic individual just like overtake whatever human strength and ability they have. Like, and it is wild. Like, there are some wild things that you observe when we're talking about.
But I also think too, just to go to staffing, specifically on like psychiatric units, burnout.
Yes, because if you go in to work every day and you, as a clinician, are operating on fight or flight mode, because that literally the drop of a hat, one of your patients somebody could fart in the wrong direction and it could set somebody off. Do you know what I mean? So it's like you have to be on your yourself. You have to be acutely aware of what's going on the unit at all times, especially if your unit is heavy. Like, and what I mean by heavy is like you have a lot of really acutely psychotic, actively psychotic patients.
Yeah. Like, when you're dealing with all of that, again, especially for people just coming into working with mental health, what would be some of the biggest suggestions to takeaways, like biggest takeaways
in terms of like training or like what they should go into it kind of understanding? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, like just why they should, like, even if you're deciding to get into, for example, I want to get into mental health, what would be some of the biggest thing I need to be careful of? What are some of my skill sets that I need to kind of
turn
cope
that over
with
to you,
it?
because it's been a minute since I've been frontline. So
So in regards to like training and stuff, I think it's crucial to have crisis prevention,
crisis intervention, CPI.
Yeah, so CPI, you need it.
Yes.
When I was at my other job within the hospital,
mental health first aid,
mental
too.
health first aid, DBT,
CBT.
CBT, anything to help better your practice to ensure you're giving like top quality care.
Mm-hmm.
But it's
I think the common misconception
Yes.
is that when you graduate your college or university degree that you just get to stop learning then. No.
we have you've seen it,
professional
but
development.
we have our oh gosh, my colleague would kill me if I don't remember this. When you register as a social worker, you have to do your professional development, and you have to keep doing it every year to ensure you're actually maintaining competency in your practice.
You have to show that
and show
you are
your goals,
committing
your SMART goals.
Yeah. And then you get a 500-ish. Our college doesn't give us much, but it's 500 annually towards any professional development.
We have
training or
stuff
certification.
through my work.
Yeah, and there are education programs through certain
Sometimes.
employers.
Yes.
Do you guys see a lot of turnovers, like people switching fields immediately after the first initial years? Like I know a lot of other fields definitely see that. What about specifically mental health?
A
and
lot
BSWs?
of my colleagues have gone into private practice.
Mm-hmm. That's huge right now. Yeah,
very huge.
Because post-pandemic, obviously, we saw
Yeah.
a huge spike in that first year of the pandemic in the number of unaliving attempts and in the increase in the number of people seeking mental health services and supports. So I think the increase in the need and the increase in the trainees, like it didn't align. We had a huge spike, but we didn't see the same intake of people sort of taking that on as a field of education.
Yep.
So like talking about COVID and office demographic shift with like immigrants coming in and like the whole just demographic switching a little bit. Are there some major differences, like some of the health issues really piking up? For example, COVID had a lot of depression coming in, right? Like there was office spike and like isolation was a big issue.
Do you mean, are we seeing international students and international like newcomers coming through the system?
Yes, refugees, international students. What are one of the biggest spikes coming in?
Every day.
Yeah,
every day.
had a lovely gentleman who came in. He was a newcomer, and he had no healthcare coverage, so he was going to be swapped with like a 25,000-30,000 bill. And so and that caused him to spiral.
A healthcare. I don't have a healthcare coverage currently. So obviously something that I would love to know is what are some of the mental health issues that are currently spiking that you're seeing with international students? Like, whenever I would face something specifically, I would just be like, yeah, it's okay. We're just, push through it, and that's
so
okay.
honestly, if I can be transparent, it's usually substance-induced psychosis.
Wow.
So a lot of newcomers are turning to recreational drug use. But a lot of the times, if you're using heavy substances, polysubstance, anything, it can sometimes induce a psychosis, and that psychosis can lead you to getting apprehended by the police.
I did not expect that. Yeah, no, because like this, I think this was a misconception that I specifically had, that a lot of newcomers and international students are kind of changing the trend of actually the drug abuse that is so prominent.
Yep.
But I guess not. Like, is that something that's coming in with people who have been in the country for a while?
They're usually here for like maybe 5 years or less, and they are accessing these hard drugs such as like meth or
fentanyl.
Fentanyl, dribbling a little bit into that.
So did you hear what you just said?
No.
So my question was like, with recent international students coming in, what are some of the biggest mental health issues that you are observing?
Oh.
And the answer is
substance-induced psychosis.
Yes,
or disorder. So substance-induced or substance disorders or substance-induced psychosis that leads them to getting involved with police because they get apprehended. Then they come to our psych emerge, and then they come to us to see like, well, is there anything else, or is it just substance use?
That is so surprising to me, because just standing at that position and knowing how much is at stake.
Right?
How much of
Can you explain to me, like, what if you were a student who was here on like a
student visa, work permit,
and you were involved in drug bust, or like you were describe to me what that would mean for your status.
Legally, I wouldn't be very sure of what the legal implications to it would be exactly, but at the end of the day, you're getting deported.
Oh yeah.
You're getting
Yeah.
it's going to impact your permanent residency if that is something that you're looking at. Like, absolutely 99% it's going to impact it. Like, there's no escaping that. And just on a very day-to-day basis, to know that you are here with just so much at stake. I know, like, some people come from, like, they don't have financial obligations and stuff like that, but even at the end of the day, you're just out here by yourself with, like, just so much responsibilities and on day-to-day functioning. I can't even, like, no.
But that's the thing. So you're just saying that.
So many things I can't mention, but still.
But think about that. Think about being alone and figuring out the day-to-day while being in a new world. And you're trying to figure life out. Sometimes people do turn to drugs because then at least it gives them some type of belonging.
Yeah, I was just gonna say it's a
So
way
you're gonna turn
connect
to
with
that.
people, or it's a way to relate to people, or man, I'm giving too many TMIs this episode. But one of the things that I struggled with early in my getting to know who I was as an individual was trying to fit in to certain social groups and certain, friend groups and whatever. And it's like when you come to a new country and, the first people who are nice to you, you get invited to go out. And then all of a sudden these people that you met and now you're out with them and then you discover what they're into. And it's like, well, I don't want these people not to like me, or I don't want to not fit in this circumstance. So sure, I'll drop the Molly, or I'll do whatever it is you guys are doing.
Just have
Like,
to belong.
can you maybe Sham, you can give a little bit of an insight into what
This
that's
was
like.
actually my experience last year. So I started my course January 2023, and immediately I was like, obviously I was like every person was looking for a job and kind of like just socializing.
Where do you
a
fit
bit.
in? Yeah.
And for me, I do have my set hobbies and things that I really enjoy. Like, I knew from day one that my first priority was to like find a gym, a place where I could just lift something, stuff like that. I knew what my priorities were, like what I was looking for. And I was like, yes, I don't want to be working just anywhere again. I want to be in healthcare. So I was definitely looking at people who are in those fields and students and stuff like that. And before I knew it, I was in a friend group which were constantly drunk.
Oh no.
And mind you, as much as I joke
Were
about
they going
being,
out and drinking, or like drinking at home?
it was both. It was just I don't even think they were driving without drinking. Like, and to make it a point, as much as I joke about being an alcoholic, I don't think I've had a drink in like 2 months now. It's very a social thing. Like, I would probably take a cooler. So this was like a big trigger for me. I was like, what the hell?
You're around all these people who are drinking, and it's like, oh.
Yeah, and I was like, I always thought that, I was above and beyond. Like, this is not me. I would never be doing this. And even now, I'm like, yeah, absolutely not.
As I'm sipping a beer.
Same.
As I'm sipping a beer.
But at the end of the day, what I observed was that in a matter of 2 months, like, I talked to my best friend and I reflect on that time, and she's like, you were constantly drunk.
Oof.
Wow.
You were like, you would call me in the evening, because I call her every day, and I would be drunk out of my guts.
Did it hurt you to hear her observation?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
maybe you feel ashamed or something, like.
Right.
So because it was coming from a safe person, I never, and I think because I had this self-awareness so much, I was like, oh my God, I've been drunk for the past 4 days.
Yeah.
I was like, this needs to change. And as painful as it was to like set them off and tell them to, like, you can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
There's a boundary. You don't want to associate yourself. And it was really hard, and it was very toxic, and a lot of manipulation coming in my way. But I think what really, really helped me is that I didn't have people in my life who were shaming me for it. Like, my best friend, she would never go and be like, oh my God, you were like that. No.
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 She's like, dude, you were struggling and like
Yeah.
you were in a bad place. We need to get the out of here.
I'm not proud. Like what I'm about to say, I'm not proud of. And there has been a lot that has changed in the last, my life really changed after my dad died. So I would say like 10 years. Not even. Oh my God, 7 years. So for the last 7 years, my life's changed a lot. But from when you live in a small town in Canada and a small town in Ontario, like the only thing to do is drink.
Yeah.
So the first time I drank, and maybe you can say, how old were you the first time you drank with your friends?
Mom.
Sorry, Mom.
I was going to say like maybe 15.
15? How old are you? What grade are you in 15? Grade 9?
Yeah.
Grade 9,
Yeah.
grade 10?
Yeah.
Same. So I would say that the first like alcoholic drink that I had was either in like grade 9 or grade 10, and it was in somebody's basement.
Yeah.
And then from there, it evolved into like cornfield parties and
Yes.
like forest
Sassafras.
parties and like just really, really, really shady circumstances that when I think back now, like it's a miracle
Yep.
that I survived some of the drunken. And I please do as I say, not as I do. I was I did very, very risky, very, very risky things as an adolescent and into my young adulthood, even into my 20s, like into my mid 20s, late 20s. Like there were certainly circumstances that I put myself in that were not wise. And what I admire so very much about this newer this younger generation that's coming through is like going out on a Saturday night and getting blackout wasted is not it. Like it's not it. It's not it to poison your brain.
So that's the surprising thing to me, because that was my presumption. But now, obviously, listening to Aleena's experience, I just feel like there's a lot of wanting to integrate yourself into a community.
Self-sabotage.
Yeah, there's a lot of self-sabotage, and I've done it. Like, my parents, like, I know my dad's gonna listen to this episode. Oh my God.
I love your dad, by the way. We're LinkedIn besties.
But yeah, like as much I was telling my parents, yeah, we're going out. I'm going out with friends. I'm gonna get like we're drinking alcohol. They wouldn't be, because obviously it would send me so far and stuff like that. But again, my parents have been pretty open about it. Like I've always had alcohol at our place. I never stole any.
Dad,
and
don't worry, she's a good girl.
And but I've always had the chance to do so it was never a big deal for me. But I also know that a lot of people are coming in with it's a newfound freedom. And
yeah, if you were under the thumb of a family or parental unit, and then you come to a new country and now you're trying to integrate yourself into a friend group, and they're like, let's do tequila shots.
yeah,
Like,
so
You're gonna do it because you want to mesh yourself in that, right?
yeah, and it's like it's fun. The buzz is so nice and so fun, but God, the things that are at stake.
oof.
But
Yeah.
also, like, what would be some of the people listening, people struggling with this? What would be some of the biggest, tips and tricks and suggestions and advices you could give them? Like,
Ooh.
I don't know if I'm qualified to be giving advice anymore.
I can. For anyone just struggling, lean in on your people.
Okay. Yes,
Yeah.
for sure.
what about people who are still trying to find them? Like,
Yeah. If you don't have people,
I don't think everybody is just as lucky or have the privilege of having a family or best friends back home. But
That's great, and that's why a lot of people come to us where I work.
hey, I
because
got
of
an idea.
isolation.
Come to OBM.
Yeah, find a group. Go
Find
go
a
on a walk.
community.
Go on
Find
a
a
walking.
community.
Go to a walking group. Go do something. Go sit in the grass.
I think the worst thing you can do is isolate yourself.
sitting on a grass.
Go sit in
when
the
I
grass.
tell
Grounding
you,
yourself. That's an actual thing. Grounding yourself.
I can't
I
even
got
do
off. I got off on a public transportation. It was spring last year. I got off of a public transportation. There was a patch of green grass next to the highway, and I sat there. It was beautiful.
Yes. You know, they say that you're actually supposed to do that in cemeteries. You're supposed to go and you're supposed to take your shoes off and you're supposed to walk the grounds of graveyards, because it's supposed to just be very profound and very grounding, because it gives you the opportunity to reflect on the finality of death and like what it means to
Yeah.
be able to literally feel a blade of grass on your toe.
And you know what else I recommend too? Is cry.
Oh,
Cry.
yes.
Just cry.
Thank you.
Just
Thank
cry.
you.
What you can do that alone. You can do it with people. You can do it alone. I don't care how you're gonna do it.
Cry.
Cry.
It's
I
a
want you
release.
to cry where your eyes are swelled up.
For my Indian gang, when I'm really, really down bad for months together, what really works for me is listening to very dirty item songs.
What is
my-
that? Dirty
So,
item songs.
Item songs is basically you get like a really beautiful, very well-to-do, very capable actress. You dance on a very cheap song and just demean her as much as possible with the
Love it.
dirtiest
You're
existed
going to have to
lyrics.
teach that
Yes.
strategy to me
Yeah,
because my
put a-
current strategy is just sink into the deepest, darkest
Well,
depression.
I would
and
suggest,
then-
like, if you're not able to understand Hindi, go for Latin music, like Latina.
Love it.
Oh,
So sultry.
it's so slow.
Oh my
Just listen to
goodness.
it and dance
Yeah.
to it by
Listen,
yourself.
you know, as much as I would love to sit here and chat with you for 97 hours, can we move on to some segments, please?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's time to take up the talking points, ladies.
Okay.
So, Aleena, you get to choose. We have three
Oh,
different
I
themes
have
of
it.
talking points. We've got, what are the themes, Shem?
Support,
Support,
Okay.
generations,
generations,
and resilience.
resilience. So, first you have to pick a theme: support, generations, or resilience.
Support.
Support. And then inside the box, pull out the little first card there. It kind of gives you the idea of what each color means. So you can choose if it's red, yellow, purple, blue, whatever, and then we'll draw that color for you. Turn over the card as well. There's a couple of colors on the back. Do you want to do?
I want me to choose. I don't.
Yeah,
know.
pick whichever color.
Let's go with building connection.
Building
That's
connection.
green.
Okay.
Green's my favorite.
Of course it is.
So just pick from the whatever, and then hand the card to Sham. You're not going to read it out loud. Sham's going to read it to you. You got one? Okay, perfect.
I don't know why I close my eyes.
Surprise.
Oh, that's really nice. Do you think it is better to have a really smart friend or a really funny friend?
What about both?
I'm gonna go with smart.
How would you say that?
Yeah. Because I need them to point me in the right direction, so then I can eventually laugh at myself at the end for asking. I need someone who's gonna ground me with their intelligence and give me the best advice possible. Like Shannon, she's very smart and it gives me solid life advice that it's not like, oh, you're doing great. It's like in depth, thought out, critical.
I think
But it's because she's smart, and then eventually we can laugh at each other,
Yeah.
with each other, because she's able to give me that advice and me look back and be like, ha ha ha. But I need the smartness. I need the smartness to get to the light at the end of the
I don't
tunnel.
know that I would define myself as
I think you're
smart.
smart.
I think what I am able to do is help you look at circumstances in a
Smart.
rational way. Like I'm able to help you break things down more systematically and rationally.
But that's smart. So same with my other friend. She's able to, because she's so smart, she's able to strategize things and think it thoroughly out with me and for me. Smart.
Can I ask you the same question? What do
Yeah.
you think? Funny or smart?
I think I've been laughing at myself for way too long. I need somebody smart
Yeah.
for sure.
Slap me in the face with your smartness.
Yeah, like my
Give me those
head is
goods.
so funny, you
Yeah.
don't even want to be there. But
I feel silly for saying what I'm going to say, but I want funny friends. Like I don't align myself with people who are not smart. Like
No, you don't.
I immediately, if I don't feel like we connect on an intellectual level,
Yeah.
then it's not going to be it for me. But
Yeah.
if I know that if we connect on an intellectual level, that our humor will be the same. So
Yeah.
it's not.
That's
For
true.
me,
Valid
it's more
point.
important that you are funny because I already know that you're smart.
Yeah.
If you and I are connected in any way, you gotta for you to be considered a friend to
Yeah.
me, you have to already show your smartness
Yeah.
and cherry top it with the humor.
Okay.
And then
Yeah.
and then it's it for
Nice.
me. Yeah.
makes sense.
Very
Okay.
good. Are you gonna
Your turn.
Oh, okay.
You wanna do the same section?
I'll choose from support, yeah. And the green. I love green
course,
too
green.
also. Okay. And I'll just
Do you have any special talents you could share?
Do I have any special talents? No. Like, I know that there are probably people who assume that I have special talents, but I think that the things that I'm good at are not like necessarily things that can be taught. I think they are just a product of my unusual brain and my unusual way of living. Like, I had a conversation with a couple of people after class a couple weeks ago, and I was explaining to them how I work at 4 schools and a hospital, so I technically have 5 jobs. Plus, I'm launching a not-for-profit, so technically that's like 7 jobs.
I like the overwhelming breathing in your tone.
Big breath.
And so, like, when I actually articulate to people how I function, like what my life is sort of measured by, I think my unusual skill is that I'm able to do a lot of things. I'm able to fill my schedule in a way that I can have multiple sources of income, but not everybody can do that. Like, not everybody can jump from 100 things to the next, right? Like, there are some people who are like, I like my 8 to 4 routine, and I like going to the same place every day, and I like having the same conversations every day, and I like the consistency, and I like the, routine. Whereas me, I would rather jump off a cliff.
This is the thing. So I do the 8 to 4. I go to the gym after. I love it.
Yeah, you're very regimented, and it frustrates me.
But if I don't have the structure,
it's chaos.
And I will binge drink. I could say this openly.
Yeah,
as you know,
yeah,
I've seen it. I will binge drink. I will engage in very risky things because I'm not at work.
Right. If you don't have that accountability.
I need the structure. I need the responsibility to take care of my patients.
Right. Yeah.
And it makes me feel whole and warm inside. If I don't have that, if I had like a week off, like I did,
then you slip into
I go right into it. And it's like, not just, you're like, a week off. No, I go full-fledged because I don't have my job.
See?
So I need the structure.
I think I kind of have an unusual circumstance where it's like, I like structure, but then when I'm in structure, I hate it. And then when the structure's not there, then I'm like, where's the structure?
Yeah.
And then I'm in the structure and then I resent it. So I go through these obviously unusual sort of phases or circumstances, but I don't know. I just think that I function in an unusual way. And when people say to me, like, what is your skill? I think my skill is being able to play 7 games of chess at once. Like, not that I even know how to play chess, but I'm using that as an analogy to sort of describe that I'm able to do multiple complicated things at once. But whether or not people on the outside would necessarily say that I'm doing all 7 of those things to the best of my ability, I think that I feel sometimes that even though that is a strength, it's also a flaw because I take on too much and I think that I can do all of those things. And for a short period of time, I can do all of those things, but then one thing will wax and wane, or there will be ebbs and flows, or there will be a complete collapse of whatever. And then I will beat myself up for not being able to obtain an unusually exceptional expectation on oneself, which is a flaw. So my skill is simultaneously a good thing and a bad thing. So when people say like, I want to learn from you, it's like, do as I say, not as I do. Like, don't do what I do. Because even though what I'm doing is seemingly on the outside possibly perceived as success, from an insider's view and from an insider's perspective, it's pandemonium and chaos. And not a lot of people see those more vulnerable, weak breakdowns of... And this is what I was saying at the beginning in the raw footage before we even started recording. I was like, people think that I'm capable of doing things, but I quite literally need someone to like help me with some very basic activities of daily living. So
I love it.
Yeah.
I feel like I stand right in the middle of the two
Yeah.
of you. I definitely cannot sit. I need
No,
to.
neither can I.
Yeah, I need to be like, how many times have I texted you like, I need to do something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is
And that's something that I really appreciate about you is that I don't relate well with people who are comfortable with stagnation.
Oh.
Like
Yeah.
I need to
Yep.
know that you are interested in professional growth
Yep.
or interpersonal growth, or
Yes.
you're constantly looking for your next challenge, or you're looking for the next possibility that could, you know.
I think
Sky's
those
the
are the
limit.
biggest turnoffs for me in interacting with people in general.
Yes.
Stagnation, people not wanting to do stuff, or
Slipping
just like
into your weird
talking.
comfort
Yeah.
zone, and
talking about wanting to make these big changes and not doing actually anything about
Yeah.
it. So definitely something that's for me is like, I cannot still sit still.
No.
I need
So-
to have a project. Yeah.
Although I have structure with my job,
Yeah.
I still am always on the go.
Yeah.
And you do a lot of things that are healthy for your physical health
you.
and your mental health. Like you do spin and you go to yoga and like
45.
you're one of my friends. Like if I could, you know, I have like 4 friends. So of my handful of friends, when I think about your commitment to your physical health, you prioritize that. Like I would
need
ask
to.
you, I'm like, come and do this really fun social event thing with me. And you're like, no, I got to go to the gym. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Like you got to go to spin class and you don't want to go to this like that social event that we went to with Baby
Yeah.
Bree. And
I
I was like,
gym.
come to that. And she's like, no, I have to go to the gym. And I'm like, bitch,
Yeah.
Agreed.
what? Come.
I had to go.
Because if I don't take care of my physical health, I don't take care of it impacts my mental
I'll go
health.
cuckoo.
Then it won't let. Then it's like a domino effect.
It
Yeah.
is. It absolutely. If I am not
brother.
as much hate as I get for like not like being there 7 days a week, if I'm not, I am like just on my bed, not
Yeah.
being productive at
Yeah,
all.
I lose
See,
it.
and that makes me feel like a total wiener because I struggle to go to the gym. Like structured gym activity gives me so much anxiety.
Wow.
I need to go to the woods with the dogs and run hills
Yeah.
sprints. Like I'm not about like going to a gym and hopping on a machine and setting a timer for things.
I
don't know
can't,
if
do,
you
I can't
guys-
do that either, huh?
I don't know if you've guys seen Friends, but you know
Yeah.
the
Have
way
I seen Friends?
Phoebe,
It's my favorite show.
And she runs through
the way Phoebe
Central.
runs. That's what I think every time she says I'm going on the trail. I was like, okay.
She's like flailing arms.
So we like to wrap up
Yep.
every episode of the All of You podcast by talking about the olive and the pit. So
Okay.
the definition of this is like the good and the bad. So the olive being the good,
Yes.
the
Look,
best,
this is over
the
here.
olive.
Hi.
Oh, we love her. So the olive, and then of course, when you get an olive with a pit, it's like, oh, damn. And you
Yep.
bite down on it, you're like, damn it, the pit. So what was your olive of the week? And what was your pit of the week? Let's break it down. You can choose to go as deep or as
Oh, you want me to go
superficial as
deep?
you choose.
Okay. So it's actually like a mix in both. This past week, a chapter closed
Yes, it did.
that I that I struggled very much to close,
Yeah.
but it's out of my hands.
And so we're not going to give any sort of
Yeah.
details to that, but we'll just say like an interpersonal circumstance, not professional in
Not
any
professional
sense,
at all.
just an interpersonal circumstance that you've been navigating for a long time has finally
Yeah.
come to an end. And I think that was
yes.
really important for you.
And why it's an olive, it's because it's finally like,
Oof. Yeah.
and
That
it's
deep.
just like, and why it's a pit, because it's navigating grief.
Yeah.
And grief comes in many forms, whether it's a breakup, death, losing a job, losing a friend, losing anything significant.
Yeah. Grief isn't just,
And it's rough.
oof.
Rough. But they have blended into two beautiful things for me.
Yeah.
Um,
Growth.
and I think it's more of an olive, let's say.
You know what? I'm going to let you say that
Yeah.
that circumstance you went through was both an olive and a pit.
Yeah, it's both.
I don't think you need to differentiate between the two at all.
And now it's out of my hands, and I can just
Listen, now
fluff
you
off.
get to breathe.
And all of it is like now I've gone on like 3 dates in a week.
Oh my goodness. 3 dates in a week.
And the pit is like, well, what? Like I have like life is good. The pit is like, what do I do now? Because there's all these lovely hot men
and olives. There's all these olives. There's these olive branches that you can extend.
It's
all of
great.
the extension of olive branches. All right, Sham, the olive in the pit, baby.
Oh, my turn?
Yes.
Oh. The pit would definitely be, I have a lot of not so great news about my professional life.
Oh, talk about that, please.
Yeah.
Let's go into that a little bit. You don't have to do the whole thing, but just a little bit.
I've just had like
a series
of interviews and fallouts with them. Like, well, I don't really know what happened, and because it was just as much as the initiation was so personal, and like I had a contact and I was talking to them, the rejection emails were very automated and coming in at 3:00 in the night.
Yeah.
So I don't really know. I don't have a lot of closure with those jobs. And the fact that the interviews went so well was something that just made it a little bit harder.
Of course.
But I think I guess the olive was like,
You got the interviews.
I guess, and I colored my hair red. It does not show because
it's not going to show on these lights, but in the sunshine, it's like purple red.
That's the best thing that happened this week.
Cherry cola,
Yeah.
Side
purple.
note, did you ask for feedback from the interviews?
For the first one that I actually did, it wasn't a big place. It was actually a clinic, and I was just talking to the point of contact, the one who interviewed me. So I asked her for feedback. She kind of ghosted me. So I was like, okay.
Not worth your time then.
Yeah, and the second one, surprisingly, the person who was my point of contact, the project coordinator, she actually emailed me about the rejection after like 4 days. So like I first got the automated message, but then she emailed me as well. So I have asked for feedback, like just to get a perspective of what I did wrong or where I can improve. Haven't heard back from them though.
Yeah.
So, and you probably won't.
No.
And I think
So
this is the
shady.
thing that makes my blood boil. Like it just makes my blood boil.
That was demonic.
It makes me feel demonic.
Yeah.
Like it makes me feel demonic because it's not just you. It's so many people.
Yeah.
It's so many people who prepare for days going into these interviews, and they're putting their entire heart and soul into this experience, and they're trying to, put their best foot forward, and they go into this experience, and these interview panels give you 13 and a half minutes of their time.
Yep. So
hold on. Like you went in for that interview and I said, Sham, text me when the interview is done. And I'm fully expecting like the interview starts at 1 p.m. So I'm like, okay, I'm not going to hear from her until 10 after 2.
Yeah.
You emailed or you texted me at like 1:15.
Yeah.
And I know I
actually,
probably
so 2 to
wasn't even the
2:15.
person that she texted first. So I'm thinking like, how much time did these people give you? How much time did you get?
Like they usually have a series of questions they need to go through.
But anyways, but it's like, so I'm getting this text message from Sham, like literally 13 minutes after the interview starts and it's done. And I'm like, what? And not only her, but like many people who I've spent more time prepping them for the interview than they actually got for the interview.
So because I'm nervous before an interview, my best strategy is to be there a little early.
Of course.
So for God's sake, I have been at places like an hour before. I'm just like sitting this interview. I was sitting at the cafe next door for like an hour before before I actually went in, and I went in like half an hour before.
She saw the candidate before her go in for the interview before.
So she went in.
And how long was her interview?
15 minutes. She was out in 15 minutes. They gave us a 10-minute window in between, and then I was in.
This is a clinic?
And while I was
this one was an organization. We don't need to say names or locations, but this was an organization. And so tell me, what does that speak to you?
And when I was going down, like, there was another person waiting.
Hold
to
on.
go up.
I shouldn't go to say, what does that speak to you? I want you to say, how did your 12 and a half minutes go?
Okay, so I take interviews as a supervisor. I do take interviews, and we have a set questionnaire,
Of course.
that we follow.
Sorry, you mean that you sit on interview panels. You're hiring people now
Well,
in your job, in your current job.
in my current job,
Yeah,
yeah.
so
that's
you
part
know
of
what
my
an
job.
interview is
Yeah.
all about.
Yeah.
And so when you went in for this 13-minute interview, what did it entail?
So when I'm hiring for people to work laundry, I have a bigger questionnaire than they had for me.
Yeah, that's concerning. Red flag, red flag, red flag.
So
what's the red flag to you?
Why are they not being thorough with the candidates that they're hiring to their company?
yeah, so
Why?
that kind of just projected the fact that they maybe weren't really interested, because the position, it's actually quite demanding.
And it's a contract. So
Yeah.
she saw one candidate go before her. She went in and she saw another candidate going in after her.
So
And the
I know
person before was 12 and a half minutes and you were 13.25 minutes. So if they were just fucking, pardon my French, rotating
Yeah.
15-minute interviews through the continuum, how
Why?
are they certainly determining who they were
Yeah.
hiring for the job?
So I know for the fact that the job required a lot more details, because it required a lot more skill sets, certifications.
But we
I had to-
hammered that down. Like, you knew 98% of that job description. You had experience or you knew it well
Yeah.
enough that you would be able to be
the
trained to do
reason
it.
why I
Competent.
was really excited and I knew that this is a job for me, even if it's not like paying me, I'm not going
who
to
cares?
become a
It's
fucking
experience.
millionaire at the end of the day. But the fact that it was like there and it was, it was, sometimes it's just so perfect, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, yo, I have worked with these
Yeah.
exact softwares.
And
these
they were
exact
so
things.
nice to you. And they were like, yeah, we're really looking forward to it.
Yeah,
and you're
'cause
real great.
In the interview, one of my questions that I asked was, what was the current project? So it was like a research project. And they explained the project in detail and the team.
She asked them. She was
Yeah.
like, tell me about whatever. And like, da 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 da.
So, like, I even asked, so one of my questions was, I don't know if it was like a negative thing or a
Yeah.
positive one, but one of my questions was, do you look at my resume and are there any, concerns that you might have or any
You asked
things
them
that,
that?
yeah,
That's
like
nice.
some areas that you would like for me to improve on to be just a better fit for the job? And they said, honestly, I don't think so. I think this is great. Like, I love the experience that you have had, like, with patients as a supervisor. And on
Your
top of that,
availability is great.
yeah,
Yeah.
your certifications match, and because I've worked with Salesforce, that is very very similar to the software they were acquiring. They were like, yeah, I mean, it's so transparent. I mean, we're still learning, and it's a learning curve, but that's just part of it. So,
But
they were
here's our
pretty-
13 and a half minutes of our time.
That's it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Next.
And
So,
then
like-
she saw the next person go in for their 14-second moments of fame. And can I be honest with you and tell you what I know? They already knew who they were going to
Yeah.
hire. They went in, they booked an hour of their day. They booked 4, maybe 3 20-minute interviews. They had no intention of getting
No.
to know any of these
They just
candidates.
have to check it off their boxes.
HR,
to make sure HR wasn't gonna
has
be on.
so
Yeah.
organizationally, especially large corporations,
Yeah.
large organizations, they have certain thresholds that they need to obtain
Yeah.
when they are hiring and interviewing. What do you think I'm going to say?
Oh, I know.
When they are hiring and interviewing,
external applicant.
No,
no.
I know where she's going.
What?
When they are hiring and interviewing, culturally
Culturally.
diverse
It
and
looks good.
oppress.
Oh, that's actually a good point, because all of the people
Yeah.
were Indians.
Aha.
It
Before
looks
and after
good
me.
to
Yeah.
make sure they're
So
they're
they
they're
have
being
to show that they have interviewed
And they're being inclusive.
They're being inclusive.
That's kind
Yeah.
of, yeah, I get that.
So an organization has to show that they are hiring X number of women, X number of. That's why when you submit
Indigenous.
indigenous. That's why when you
African-American,
submit an
obviously.
application, especially through these big
Yeah.
big time corporations, do you identify as someone with a disability? Do you identify with someone as a visible minority?
Minority.
Are you
Well,
a visible minority?
Technically, I'm not. because
Wow.
we're overrepresented. But no, I do get that. I see all of those factors. Like,
I'm not saying it's right. For the record, I'm not saying it's right.
Yeah, but I do see like why, for me personally, as somebody who is trying to get like, just so like a fresher, I would say, getting into industry is my first preference is to like, if I want to aim at big organizations, big healthcare units, I would be like, I don't give a shit what kind of job it is. I don't care what contract it is. I just want to get my foot in.
Yeah.
Because I know internal hiring is a big thing. My grief is not with that. My problem is not with that. My problem is that if that is the case, if you have an internal applicant that you're going to give preference to, don't
Mislead or gaslight
the external
the
applicants.
candidates. Yeah.
Be very clear about it. And I mean, if that is the case, if you were just kind of like checking the waters out or doing your stuff, just do a stupid Zoom interview. I don't give a shit.
My word of advice to anybody who's even listening still at this point is, if you are going to interview at a large corporate position and it is a contract position, I strongly advise that one of the 2 to 3 questions you ask at the end of the interview is if you are considering any internal candidates for the role. And you have every right to ask that, because you should not have to wait for a week and a half to hear back from some automated email response that's sent out to you at 2:00 in the morning on a Saturday that you've been passed on by an opportunity because a corporate HR process required an interview panel to meet with a minimum of 3 to 4 external candidates in order for them to make a definitive decision about hiring an internal candidate for a contract position.
You know what's funny though? I don't even
Everything
think
is funny about what I just said. It's funny and hilarious.
You know what's funny, but this is not even the worst part. This is not even the worst part, because I know right now in downtown Toronto and big corporate organizations, wow. Can we just cut that out? A lot of...
We'll have to decide what we're going to do about that in post.
Yeah, like there's just a lot of organizations right now who are basically screening out candidates based on their place of residency, like their primary, where they live in.
Making decisions about whether they're going to hire someone based off of where they live and deciding whether the commute is too long for them.
Yeah. So I have had like the phone interview I had was basically a pre-screen, and the only question that was a little bit like the interview went, there was a pause. Do you plan on like, do you have plans to like move? That was the only question where she paused, or I wasn't exactly matching the requirement.
And then her application was moved to archive. And another person, I'm not going to disclose names or anything, but somebody that I've been mentoring for quite a long time, was offered a job based off of a recommendation that I put forward and vouched for this person and spoke on their behalf. Months ago, they were just invited for an interview at the beginning of July, and successful in the interview, successful in all the pre-screening, everything, was offered the job, and then got a call from the manager and was asked, "Where do you live?" And when that person said where they live, that manager said, "Oh, this isn't going to work. You're not going to be able to make it here for the day shifts that I'm going to get last minute sick calls for. So I don't need you." And the person that I mentored had to literally like sell their soul to the devil and say like, "I will be able to get there. I can make it work. I have a car. Like, I know people who work in this region who work where you are." Like, he literally had...
I think he low-key promised to move there too.
Low-key promised to move there to sell his soul to this organization, because that manager could define what a appropriate geographical proximity to the organization was exceptional to them.
I don't even know what kind of like screening is that. Like, it's not your business.
No word of a lie.
I've never been asked that question.
No word of a lie. 5 months since I sent the recommendation email. Yeah. For him to offer the job and then take away the job in a split second, all because of where he lived.
Is it even worth it?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Honestly, I
say no, but because you've never experienced, like, I know that I have a sickening entitlement, and I am not proud of that. I know that my career has been very what do they call it? Wizard of Oz,
Yeah.
Gold Path, Yellow Brick Road. Like I've literally had the yellow brick road of a career. Like no
We also
blunders
worked for
apart from like a scarecrow and a
You also work for
courage tiger and shit.
Just making that clear, you also worked for it.
Okay, but whatever.
Sorry.
Like I have not had circumstances where I've been turned down the way that people have been turned down.
Yeah.
Or can I just say, if I ever had an interview that was 13 and a half minutes long, I would have something to say. Like,
No, because
like there would be words. Like there would be words had.
So
Like
the
nobody
thing-
has ever given me 13 minutes of their time. You give me 53 minutes of your time. Like
The thing is, like, because I'm just starting off, like my first interview, the current job, it was pretty long. And even when I was doing an internal interview, it was still very long.
right.
Like I had a whole.
So what's happening now? Like what's happening in the workforce now?
So what's surprising is that the first interview that I did, the last 3 interviews that I'm talking about, third one's not really an interview, but the first interview that I did was with a very small clinic. So when she
a
didn't
franchise,
have,
by the way, like McDonald's of medical clinics.
yeah, so when like she didn't have a lot of questions to ask, or she didn't know what she really wanted to ask me, and suddenly I was listening to her daughter's personal life during the interview, I understood what kind of place I was coming from. But my second interview was that it really surprised me, and I was like down bad with it because it was a reputable place.
Yeah.
It was a big organization. There was a panel of 4 people sitting there. Why would you give me 15 minutes of time for 4 people? Just have one person do a phone interview if that's all that's required, right?
If it's
Bizarre.
just for documentation,
Yeah.
like what are you doing?
Wasting
what are you
her time.
doing? Gaslighting and,
Now
and
again-
feeding some kind of false hope of whatever into these people.
Well, to bring myself down to reality, I can always say that maybe there was just a better candidate out there.
Yeah.
And I probably didn't do so well in the
you
interviews I
wanna
think
work
I
there?
did.
why would you even want to work for an
Yeah.
organization that bypasses you off of a 13-second
Yeah.
interview with you? Like that to me is asinine.
All right.
Anyways,
Yeah.
okay.
Your turn.
Talking point. Where are we? What am I talking about? Where
You're
are we talking-
Olive
know.
and Pitt.
Oh my
Okay.
Lanta. Are we still pitting and Olive? Okay, my oh my gosh. Olive. Okay. My olive of the week has been regaining my health.
Yeah.
Because July I got COVID, guys. Like I got COVID. Who gets COVID in 2024?
Boo.
I was sick. I was very sick. And so I guess my olive is that I'm finally feeling there's like I think I'm like 98%. There's I still get winded walking up the stairs, which is stupid because like Ryan gets winded walking up the stairs and I'm like running up the stairs and I'm like, come on, let's run up the stairs. So it's silly that I'm winded walking up the stairs. But I finally feel good and I feel physically well. And in the last week I have had 2 really incredible meetings with 2 really incredible women.
Nice.
One who is a business / executive / just brilliant powerhouse of a woman who also shares the same name as me. So I'm really excited to learn more from her. And I also reconnected with a very old friend of mine. Not that she's very old, but our friendship is old and it's withstood the test of time. And I feel very much that she is like a soul sister. I don't know if you can, if it makes sense for me to explain those like types of friends that if you're apart from them for a long time and then you reconnect with them and it's like you haven't skipped a beat. Well, this girlfriend of mine and we literally haven't seen each other since like early COVID. We were trying to like figure out when the last time was that we physically saw each other in person. Like she's literally given birth to a whole human and that whole human is like talking and stuff. And I haven't seen her since. And so we were able to reconnect this past week and we sat in a cafe and we chatted for like 4 hours just reconnecting and I think there's something really beautiful about those connections that you have with people, that it doesn't matter time or space or continuum or pandemic or career or birthing a human. It doesn't matter what you go through when you reconnect with that human. You literally get to check back in right where you left off. So those two interactions with those two really wonderful human beings were really positive. The pit. I think the pit for me right now is that and I don't even really want to define this as a pit. I think I'm probably making it more of a pit than it needs to be, but I'm still very fixated on the fact that I feel like things aren't happening fast enough. And I think I'm creating a pit for myself, and that I'm putting pressure on myself, that I've like fallen behind on things that I was expecting I would be a little bit further along on. And I think the pit for me is, you know, just trying to roll with the punches and like accepting the fact that everything that we go through is a part of the experience, and we have to sort of lean into the ebbs and flows of the inconsistencies and you know, when things are going good, then we need to appreciate that. But when there are the pits and when there are the hurdles that we have to sort of overcome, we can't let that totally derail any other possible momentum that we could be sort of dealing with. And so I think the pit for me is just wanting to be able to be more organized and more connected with people and more efficient. And I'm juggling a lot of things that I'm really passionate about, and I don't want any of them to fail. And I'm, you know, creating a lot of pressure for myself. So maybe that's something that I should be looking at for the next week to offset some of that pitness that I'm creating for my scenario.
It's a totally valid pit.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be like a deep dungeon.
Pit doesn't have to be the depths, the darks of hell. Like,
I feel like pits
it's only temporary.
Yeah. Pits are usually just like things you eventually get over.
I think maybe the thing that I'll say, and this is probably a really good sort of way to close out, because we've talked about a lot of heavy things. We've talked about mental health. We've talked about navigating our own complex universe and our own, you know, the ways that we have to navigate our personal and professional lives. So I think the thing that is really important is that we give ourselves grace. The way that I would like to close this episode is that we give ourselves grace.
Yeah.
When the way we plan our lives to go don't go the way we plan.
Yeah.
Because often we have this idea of what we think our lives should be and what we think a scenario should result in, or we think we're going to get this job, or we think that a circumstance is going to result in the epitome of happiness, and it doesn't. I think we tend to often blame ourselves, and we immediately fall back on this sort of we are the problem.
Yeah.
And so because I know you both well enough now, and I know we're not disclosing too many things, I think the way I would like to end this episode is just to remind everyone and you to give yourselves grace.
Yeah.
Give yourselves grace. We are all just sacks of skin and blood floating on a rock in the middle of a universe, hurtling towards a flaming pit of flames and fire. Like, what at the end of the day gives us any right to be so hard on ourselves that it has the impact on our overall happiness and satisfaction in life? It just doesn't make sense.
No.
I agree, and I think I don't know if you've guys seen Kung Fu Panda, but there's a very famous dialogue that says, "Noodle, don't noodle, it doesn't matter." Yeah.
Yeah, baby. This is the All of You podcast. We've extended the olive branch to one of my dearest and bestest friends, Aleena Abusamara. I love you, my dear.
Love you.
Mental health, baby. Take care of yourself physically, mentally, spiritually, whatever you got to do. This is the All of You podcast. Until
Thank
next
you.
time, we love you.